University of Michigan is back in the news with the sign stealing scandal.
College sports scandals are always in the news, so we're back on the Big Mountain to bring you an update.
Hey, welcome back to the Big Mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. University of Michigan back in the headlines again with their sign stealing scandal. This, of course, occurred several years ago. Not a surprise if you watch the Big Mountain. You brought up to our dwellers about a month ago. There was more brewing here with this. You laid some things out. We want to go over that. I think you have some new items as well. I'm sure everybody has seen the headlines here, but a self-imposed suspension here for head coach Moore coming into the season. I saw they're looking at games 3 and 4, the two games that he'll be sitting out. But I think there's going to be a lot more to come. You know, we saw this here a few years ago. It started as self-imposed, and was the Big Ten going to get involved, and then the NCAA. So, Steve, what can you tell us about this? It looks like here we go again type of situation.
Well, about a month ago, like you mentioned, on our live show, we didn't do a separate episode about it, but on our live show, We talked about, I had been hearing some rumblings that we were getting close to the end of this investigation, that we're going to have the infraction, the Committee on Infractions was going to have their hearing coming up soon. We now know it's going to be in June, and that all this was getting wrapped up. And at the time, I was hearing that maybe Michigan was actually moving a little bit more towards accepting, actually taking blame, because at the beginning it was like, no, we didn't do anything wrong. Right. We will fight this till the end. So as about a month ago, I heard that they were negotiating and maybe moving in that way, in that direction. And then everything went dead silent, quiet. Mm-hmm. We see the reporting today that now Michigan is trying to do some self-punishment. Okay, that's always what you see schools doing when they know they're about to get the hammer laid down on them.
Right.
So like you mentioned, self-punishment of suspending the coach, and they just happen to pick 2 games that I think Central Michigan is one of them.
Nebraska, I think.
Nebraska. They're not not for the road game or the game against Oklahoma.
Right.
Not that game.
Right.
So they're kind of being picky and choosy with the games. They're going to self-suspend him. So I reached out to my contacts today just to see if I could find out, is there anything new? Is there anything brewing? Well, before I get to that, actually, we should also talk about a couple other things.
Okay.
It's also been widely reported, pretty widely, but it wasn't as big of a headline, that Michigan has been hurt in recruiting this spring because they had punished themselves with recruiting restrictions on their coaches. Mm-hmm. So some of their coaches have not been hitting the road recruiting. And then also we got the news last week of the president of University of Michigan.
Right.
Looks like he's going to be taking the University of Florida job.
Yeah.
So again, reach out to my contact. And so what he told me is actually there's no settlement. Okay. Because I was thinking, are we close to a settlement? This is going to be part of it. And he said no. It had gotten quiet. 2 different contacts that I talked to. And the first one really talked about this. Said that was the reason things had gone quiet, because they were looking at maybe doing a settlement.
Okay.
And he told me that the president, the outgoing president, was actually finally willing to move in that direction of making a settlement.
Okay.
But it was very clear to him that the fans and the boosters were not going to accept any compromise whatsoever. Okay. That basically, if he accepted that, he would be gone. The way their board is set up and the politics, there's always politics involved in these positions, that basically they were not going to accept any compromise whatsoever, any admission of wrongdoing, and that job was just going to become untenable, whether they agreed to a settlement. Basically, no matter what came down, if he was going to stay in that position, they were going to have to fight it tooth and nail, 100%.
Yeah.
So he started looking around. Now, I'm not going to say that he wouldn't have taken this University of Florida job anyways, because it's a great job.
Yes.
Great, the next step on a resume. Fantastic, the big flagship university in one of the biggest states in the country.
Yep.
So fantastic job. It's not like he's scurrying to, take a D3 position or something like that.
Sister Mary of the Poor?
No Sister Mary of the Poor or anything like that. But he was ready to get out of there. We saw last year Jim Harbaugh and his staff hightailing it out after they won the national championship under possibly nefarious circumstances.
Right.
And we just keep seeing this trend now with the president leaving. But again, my contact says there's no settlement. And actually, we're moving forward now to the next phase. And that's why this is coming out.
Okay.
Everybody was quiet when they thought there could be a settlement. At this point, there's not going to be a settlement. Michigan is trying to lessen the damage, lessen the blow. They know the hammer's coming down on them. Apparently, from everybody in the Big Ten, all at the higher ed, university president level in the Big Ten, they know things are about to come down on the University of Michigan. And Michigan, they're doing. If you're not going to agree to some kind of a settlement, this is the smart thing. Try and say, hey, we're real. Show that you have some. Realization that you did some things wrong, take a little bit of a self-punishment. Maybe they won't bring the hammer down on you as much. We'll see. Now, one thing that was made clear to me today to understand is a lot of people think this is going to take a long time, and it has taken a long time. Part of that, there was a delay because of that federal investigation. There was someone with charges, and I don't want to connect that too much to this, although it could have some connections, but I'm not going to get into that, other than to say that it was delayed. But at this point, they're moving forward with the school's punishment. The previous coaching staff, most of them are now gone, and those are separate. Some of the previous coaches have already taken a settlement and accepted punishment, admitted wrongdoing, and some, like Jim Harbaugh, will just fight till the end. But they're not going to hold up the Michigan University of Michigan, whether sanctions, punishments, whatever, because of those coaches. They're going to keep those things separate. So that could help speed up the process. And both of my contacts, I said today, the expectation within the Big Ten is they'll have their hearing in June. They will appeal, but all of this will be wrapped up either before the season starts or shortly thereafter. So if there is any punishments, it's known before we potentially get to a postseason and things like that. So that was a important part that both contacts really said to me is they're keeping the coaches separate from the university, with the exception of Sharon Moore, which he already did a self-punishment last year or the year before, suspended for a couple games. He's taking a couple more on now. Now, that's what's left to be seen. Is the NCAA going to say, okay, we want to suspend you. We were going to suspend you 3 or 4 games. You picked 2 games, the ones that you wanted to be suspended for, and we're just going to allow that to be the punishment, or are they going to pile more on there? That's the big question. Another thing that's interesting in all this is last year, Sharon Moore, he re-upped contract extension. And a big holdup in this is he wanted guaranteed language in his contract with Michigan that he would not be fired for this incident because he's already told the truth, put everything out there. And to be clear, what his offense is he's deleted text messages. We talked about this before. Now, they were able to find those messages, but and apparently there's not anything too incriminating in them. However, the fact that he deleted them with Connor Stallions and with that is I think it's a level 2 or level 3 violation. And he's the head coach. So it's never good when an investigation is going on. They're told to retain all records and they start deleting their text messages. So even if there was nothing incriminating in there, it's still a violation because of his conduct. But we'll have to see. Does the NCAA go with that? Do they suspend him longer? Now, do you have any thoughts on that before I get to... Because you talked about what was reported. I'm talking... this was what my contacts have told me. I do want to get into a little bit of speculation, but I want to give you a chance. I want to separate that and give you a chance to respond.
The only thing I was going to add to that was the timeline. And you mentioned the timeline, again, a month ago, was that this was going to be, or hoping to be, completed before the start of the football season. You said that before there was really any reports. The reporting now is saying the same thing. They want this to be done before or at the very beginning of the football season. So, you're being corroborated by reporters now of things that you had told our viewers here about a month ago. And that timeline seems to make sense that if there's going to be an appeal process after the original verdict and stuff, we have time to get through that until we hit September or late August, early September. So I just wanted to point that out, that was something that you were you had laid out that timeline, and again, you're being corroborated that is the timeline that looks like is going to be coming here in the next few months. So well done. Now you want to get into some speculation.
And I think it's important to separate all these things. We keep when it's nationally reported, we'll keep that almost reported as fact. It's hard to confirm. And then I like to keep it separate with what I hear from my contacts. Now, this is just Big Mountain Steve just speculating, okay? My thoughts on this, and as I've seen all of this play out, is that the NCAA, we know they consider University of Michigan under the previous regime, under the Jim Harbaugh machine, to be habitual or serial repeat offenders.
Yeah.
We've had suspensions in the past. They've been hit for recruiting violations, all of that. I think that they are going to come out and say, during that time period when Jim Harbaugh was there was a complete lack of institutional control.
Yep.
They may not be able to have a smoking gun to say this person knew or that person knew, but overall, the biggest offense under the NCAA's purview is lack of institutional control.
Yep.
That basically there was bad stuff going on all around, and nobody was in charge. No one was controlling that. Which that's about. I'm sure from your job and your position in real life, you would understand that's not a good place to be. When the administration, every level of leadership just has a lack of control and cannot stop these things from happening. Right. Or is possibly enabling them. So yes. The NCAA, I think, will come out and say lack of institutional control. Again, we know they're going to separate the Jim Harbaugh stuff and all that. So I think what I've heard is they will penalize Connor Stallions as part of this with the university. And the expectation is either somewhere between what I've heard is between a 5 and 10 year show cause penalty for him, which basically means no school in the country can hire him without coming to the NCAA and providing some kind of a great reason or evidence that he's totally reformed himself and he admits culpability and he won't do it again.
Okay.
So it's basically, hey, you're not going to get hired for the next 5-10 years.
Okay.
I have heard speculation that he could get banned for life but I think that's just incredibly unlikely because that'd be hard to defend in court. Yes. So my guess is some kind of like a 5 to 10 year show cause for Connor Stallions. The university, I think, and again, I'm taking this from what they're already doing. They're already self-inflicting the recruiting penalties.
Right.
I don't think they're going to put any scholarship penalties because we're in that flux period with the House settlement where we're going away from a scholarship number to a roster limits, and all of this is part of a legal settlement.
Yep.
So instead of going that way to punish their recruiting, I think they're going to come down with recruiting sanctions with not allowing the coaches to go out and recruit because they can control that.
Yes.
They can control the coaches, not allowing them to travel and recruit and do things like that, which is a huge, maybe not as big as it was before in the age of social media now, but still is a huge disadvantage to them.
Yep.
And I think there's going to be more penalties on Sharon Moore. He is now the head coach. He was not the head coach before, but he's basically admitting wrongdoing he already was suspended before. They're taking a self-suspension now, so they're saying he knows he messed up, and it's a big deal. It's a high-level violation. He is the head coach of a major program, and I don't think that they're going to accept allowing him to pick 2 games that he wants. So I could see them coming out with let's say first 4 games of the season, about a 4-game suspension. We'll see. They may allow the 2 to stand and say it's okay, but I think they're going to make it longer, and they're not going to allow him to pick the games because that just kind of looks bad on the NCAA. He did something wrong, and we're going to let him pick his punishment.
Right.
So
yes,
I think there'll be a little bit more punishment there. And then everything I'm hearing, which this is the big part that Michigan was facing, or that they were wanting to fight, the fans and the boosters, the 2 parts. They have a major attachment to Harbaugh. He's the Michigan man.
Right.
But the other part of it, they take so much pride beating Ohio State the last 3 years in a row, or was it 4 years in a row now? Whatever.
Yeah.
Beating Ohio State, winning the national championship, all of that. And from what I understand, the NCAA is going to insist on vacating the wins, possibly up for the entire 3-year period.
Wow.
When Connor Stallions was there for all of those seasons. Because it's so hard to determine, which games did he help you in, which games did he not help you in, whatever. So I've heard that they might vacate those wins all the way up to all 3 of those years, including their CFP championship.
Wow.
Now, this is another thing that one of my contacts stressed to me and said, there's a lot of speculation out there that the NCAA has no purview over national championship because it's a college football playoff.
Right.
However, my contact says, no, that's not correct. Yes, they don't hold the national championship, but they have a long precedent. These are 2 teams that are NCAA sanctioned teams. They're competing against each other. And they have taken bowl wins away before, which a bowl game was not organized by the NCAA. So just because it's not organized and set up by the NCAA does not mean that they give up their power over those. So my expectation is they will vacate some wins. Could just be while Connor Stallions was employed. It could be up to all 3 seasons, including the CFP championship, which that's going to be something that the Michigan fans and boosters are just not going to want to accept. They are going to want the university to fight like hell. And from what I understand, that was the big part of why they could not come to a settlement. And why and the president, who has been very supportive of Jim Harbaugh and supportive of saying we didn't do anything wrong, he realized at some point it was just untenable because they were going to have to accept some punishment like that, and the fan base and the boosters were going to just completely reject it and not accept it.
Well, it makes sense that that could be the case, that they're going to ask them to vacate who knows how many wins, especially the CFP championship. I mean, if they have to vacate that,
that's rough.
No president could continue in that situation. Right. So, I mean, by lining up what you're saying here, that seems to make sense, especially if you're being told that a settlement is no longer on the table and we're going to have to continue, and that may have been the main reason why. And the other thing, I mean, I think it's clear that I'm not looking to bash Michigan, but I'm going to state the facts. The fact that they're taking a self-imposed suspension, 2 games. Yes. And I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what the self-imposed penalty is.
Right.
Make it 1 game, make it the whole season. I don't care what it is. It proves that there's more there.
Yes.
And that what has been done has not been enough. And the University of Michigan knows that.
Yes.
Sharon Moore knows that.
Yes.
So they know they are headed down more of the path that gets them to vacating wins.
Yes.
Now, do they get all the way down? Well, that remains to be seen. Yeah. But absolutely right now we know Sharon Moore and the University of Michigan, the athletic department, and the president know that there's more there.
Yes.
They weren't totally truthful the first time.
Right.
And I'm not going to be here to judge as to how much that is or isn't. But when you take a self-imposed penalty, that's pretty much, as you said in the beginning, yep. Hey, we know something's coming. We know we haven't done everything we probably can. And I want to get back to the text a little bit, too, because it was talked about that not just, they were deleted, which you can't do. You mentioned that. But there was some things in there once they recovered them. A lot of it was just the normal happy birthday stuff, apparently.
So it was
I haven't
recruiting
seen them,
violations.
but there was some recruiting stuff. There was stuff with Connor Stallions about this. So it's not like it, and again.
It wasn't completely innocent. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it wasn't completely innocent.
Exactly. And you don't know how big then does it get. Like when you see something, you then, you're trying to make that puzzle be whatever it is, and you don't know how big it's going to be. Yes. So, I think it's clear that they think there's an issue. And then you mentioned the last time about potential practice tapes that has come. So I think we're aware of these texts. We're aware of kind of what has already happened.
Right.
I think there's going to be a lot more that comes out here in the next couple months where it's just like, here's more evidence. And I don't know how much of it we'll see, but there's going to be more evidence.
And I think, and like the way that the NCAA looks at things is their worst offense possible is lack of institutional control. And when you have the current head coach had deleted text messages, another coach was fired for telling a player not to answer questions or whatever, or, change his answers to questions. You have a paid staffer who was going on other team sidelines. It's obvious that there was a lack of institutional control.
Right.
And one of the persons who is in charge of institutional control now, Sharon Moore, head coach, he's supposed to ensure, and he was part of the problem. Now, again, it might not have been a major part, but it was still something. It wasn't nothing that he deleted his text. It's something. So I think the NCAA has to come down in some way, even just to show, even if they think this isn't going to happen again, but to show everybody, hey, we did something. You can't just get away with doing stuff like this for what we say is the most egregious offense.
Agreed. Well, I appreciate the update, Steve. We talked about doing a standalone episode. You talked about it was quiet, but there's reporting now. It corroborates a lot of what you had already said, and you're putting forth some more information as well. We'll stay on this when more news drops or Steve's able to have more information. We'll do another update on this. But, man, the smoke is continuing to billow out of UM, and we'll see how big this fire is going to be here in a few months. So with that, hey, we thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like this episode and subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you next time on The Big Mountain.